Well, you see, you're quite right there. That brought up a point we should have talked about earlier, which was this whole imbalance. When you have not integrated this feminine principle, which definitely was one of the theological teachings of the early matriarchies. And we're going to be going into this in the program about this evolution and how it got corrupted and what broke down. Because obviously the female cults and the female sects, it was their job to bring up the children correctly and to have them be very balanced. In fact, you couldn't matriculate. I mean, now I'm talking more about Irish civilizations, pre-Christian. There was no chance that a child would ever get close to becoming a druid or anyone, even a lawmaker or certainly a king, without that kind of integration. And it's quite obvious because you can see this for yourself when you read the ancient legends of Ireland. And I assume it would be the same for a lot of other places. The kings of Sumeria, the kings of Babylon, the kings of a place called Amoria, the Amorites. These guys always had symbols of the goddess around them. A shovel. Doesn't sound like a goddess symbol, but it was, because the shovel. Do you know today when you see some of these politicians doing these inaugurations where they go and they start digging up a tree or they plant a tree and you see them with a silver shovel number? All these guys in suits and going around digging in the earth. That's so old, that one. That is literally thousands of years old, and it's about the Asherah and this thing called the Asherah pole and the planting of seeds and this whole thing connected to goddess worship, right? So ancient monarchs, Marduk, Sargon, you name it. The Assyrians had it, the Syrians had it, it was all over the shop. And in Ireland too. So you get an understanding that there is no way that not only did the teachers have to initiate the young men, but those young men had to go through very important sexual rituals as well. We kind of laugh today, we laugh at the circumcision rites and all of these weird, preposterous rites. But do you know that the whole going into the underworld, which was so immeasurably sacred, the whole idea of a group of Indians protecting, say, a Native American, but they had this in Ireland as well, where the neophyte goes into the underworld. What do you think that's all about? That facing the shadow is a feminine ritual, by the way, and meeting the fears and meeting, yourself and having to deal with the shadow, as we would today phrase it. But these were serious rituals. Any ritual, for instance, that involved going to nature, having to find an animal totem. Some people were even named after a certain animal because on that day when you turned up, that was the animal phenomena or the natural phenomena that the tribal leaders saw. So you just come for the first time, they might call you that. They might call you, red leaf, for instance, because that they saw a red leaf dropping from a tree that the hour that you turned up at their place. So this constant acknowledgement of nature, or wild buffalo or something like that. I'm just giving you examples, but this constant observation of what was happening during the day. In other words, what I'm saying is the sensitivity to natural phenomena. That got lost as time went by and as the patriarchal groups started to exist. And then as man started to live in these cities, then nature gets blocked out and you're no longer watching what the sun and the moon is doing, what the stars are doing. The lights of the city block out the light, And so slowly there was a change. And the change that didn't happen 5 minutes ago. We're talking about a change that its origins actually are many thousands of years ago. And so there was indeed, as your question implies, a loss of connection with the feminine. And I still believe that needs to be brought back. In my Path of the Fool, people have been following the Path of the Fool program that we've been doing monthly. You will see a big emphasis on that. So you're absolutely right. But what I would go on to say is that because there's been a distortion, you've got to realize how can you fix a problem? How can a doctor treat a disease unless you know how bad the disease is? You could never find the cure. You could never create the cure unless you know exactly how bad the pathology is. So right now, I would say that the pathology is so bad that our whole concept of what it means to be a man and a woman is shit. I mean, it is just, it's gone for a Burton. So we're dealing with bad, so the females go, oh, well, you see, we're better than you guys because we got the feminine. No, because even the femininity, what femininity is now based on the aberration of what male is. And what male is, the aberration is based on an aberration of what feminine is. So we're really in the shit. So there has to be a complete deconstruction. That's why I'm a deconstructionalist. That's why I believe in apophatic learning, because there's no way until you break down, until you completely break down the paradigms and the models that we have in these matters. And that can't be done collectively, that has to be done individually. You know, you can't wait for your teachers to tell you, the priests or any of these people, because all of that is an aberrance. So what we have now is an extremely skewed version of femininity, and we need to watch the media to see them working on it. They're partly responsible for making it bad and continuing to make it bad. And we have an aberrant, skewed version of what masculinity is, absolutely. We've got grotesque, extremist, malignant versions of masculinity shown us by the media, and we've got malignant, grotesque versions of what femininity is, and the child grows up thinking those are normal. So unless the parent has done something to show them, no, they're definitely not normal, you know, and then try to come back to some sort of archetypal normality, you know, but that's quite a task, isn't it? You need to have a lot of psychological and philosophical insight. You've got to be close to nature and animals yourself to even have a hope of bringing that off, and a good deal of luck as well. And then you might start to impart it, as I know, because many people email me, you know, they are parents and they do it. They're trying this as hard as they can. But then what about the mom and dad? What about the grandmother, parent? You know, the uncles and aunts? They may not agree with you what you're doing. They may think, why are you letting the kid have a longer hair, or why are you doing this and that? And they may not approve of what you're doing. So there's a lot of conflict. But ultimately, I can only deal with the individual spiritual component of this, and that is that each individual is going to have to deconstruct what they know about femininity and masculinity, and kind of almost start again. Because our society now, this is a huge, huge problem, a crucial problem. It's in the back of my mind, actually, as I'm doing this program, The Female Illuminati, but yeah, it definitely needs to be in the back of everyone's mind to deconstruct a lot, not deconstruct malignantly. There's a malignant deconstruction as well. And that's what's going on with this gender dysphoria that's been rampant since the 80s. I don't mean that. I don't mean being unnecessarily transgressive just because it's cool. That's another media-generated, lie. You have to do this reverently and ultimately very spiritual, to start looking into what do I really know? And if that takes you into reading Otto Rank and Karen Horney and Jung and Freud, so be it. Go ahead, because you've got to do it. You've got to get that psychological insight to find out what on earth is a man, what is a woman, and where are the aberrant, seeds. That's progressive, actually. It sounds negative, but it's actually the most progressive thing you can do is to deconstruct what we already think we know about these subjects.
Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you.
Well, there's no question in my mind that DNA was crossed, and that has caused a very deep biological dichotomy, which is then seen in everything else we do, in all other areas of life. It permeates that conflict, that dualism, that struggle, that sense of conflict within the self, within the psyche, and then out into the theater of the world, you see. And I trace it back to not only the genetic interference which caused a trauma, but then the subsequent earth traumas as well. So there was trauma after trauma. There was a sequence of devastating traumas, both biological and terrestrial, that caused modern consciousness to come into being. And it's in a wrecked state. And we're slowly trying to siphon through that chaos, very much in the way that the character in the Pink Floyd movie, The Wall, puts together the mandala piece by piece from all the shattered parts of his room. That's what we're basically doing, and you can argue whether some people are doing it good and other people are doing it bad, or have we made much progress. Those are all relative questions, of course. The idea is that we're trying desperately to put this consciousness together, glue it all back, and see how it stands up. It's a pretty difficult and in-depth and long-running process, and it may not be ultimately successful, so, it's early days yet.